Not sure what to do with this. I have to behave now.
Where's your talent?
See, we do have one app that like to have a motion. Then action items right there. Bring over, swearing it down.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
So just need to do that first. Before we do everything else. Yeah.
He's nobody there. So you're sworn in officially.
I assume you work.
I was going to say, he expected my participation. Swear me in.
I'm out of here otherwise. All right, good. All right, I'm gonna call to order the Wilson Hills School Board meeting for August 14th. Even though we did talk about swearing in John first, I think we'll do the pledge of allegiance message statement first. So pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're gonna pick on our newest board member to read our mission statement, but I'll give her a break.
Wow.
I'll ask the vice chair to do it.
Thank you. Our mission is to graduate all students with high levels of academic and personal achievement, ready for post-secondary excellence, prepared for productive, passionate citizenship through research-based initiative and a collaborative system of support.
Thanks, Drew. Okay, so, we're gonna guess I do, 1 point.
I think, well, I think we could wait, because there's not gonna be any decision making during the work session. So if you want to wait for number 4 changes or deletions, we could add it still. We probably need to put it like at the 8.1 and then bump everything down.
All right,
It's currently number 6.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
sorry,
That's okay.
so we're doing 6.
6,
That'll be all right.
yes,
We don't need to swear in for a work session.
maybe I should.
Go sit out there.
Join the peanut gallery.
You'd like that.
All right, item number 2, we're gonna recess to work session, the board charge. So, 2.101, review of integrated guidance plan and introduction to integrated guidance level. Gosh, longitudinal targets. Good question.
In your packet, you should have the document that gives them before. But it is to start with this as a review. And if you remember, the integrated guidance plan took a total of 6 different programs from the state, put them into one. So beforehand, each program would have the same process they have to go through. What's been nice about the integrated guidance plan is they put all those into one process, one submittal, one budget document, and work with the state on getting those approved. So this basically places several ones like this, student investment plan, high school success, maybe 98. But it's all so. On page 2 of the integrated guidance plan, 4 common goals. These are common goals that are brought through the plan from the state. So well-rounded education, equity advanced, English community, and strengthen the systems and capacity. On page 3, summary of the plan. So the first one, engagement with community and data. From that, identified needs are made from the community and data engagement. Number three, outcomes are developed to address the identified needs. 4, systems for monitoring, providing accountability for the plan, and 5, universal targets for measurement of effectiveness. Our planning and development engagement is, I would say, just somewhat unique, as I think maybe most districts are, but ours might be a little bit even more unique because of the timing of Scott leaving, and in the sense becoming as starting October 3rd. All of this was put out in spring of 2022. And so that's when the initial conversation started to happen and get ready for it. So a lot of the work that I did and administrators did was really taking past engagement activities and then adding to those activities, the Wayne workforce, some meetings too, meetings that we had at Wayne College, some student interviews over at the high school. And so we just took that existing work, added to it. And then from there, what we found is there really wasn't much, if anything, that was different than the original identified needs. That came out of that. We changed some of the nomenclature around that to match what was happening at the state level. So it made sense to ODE. For instance, we talked about multi-tiered systems of support. Next page, community and data engagement. So these are the activities where we engage with the community to pull information in. So the first one, informal interviews with staff and community by new administration. Second one, review the Oregon Health Authority Health and Teen Survey data. So that was data that was collected in a survey that was done prior to me coming to the district. 3, review Oregon at a glance district profile data. So that's the achievement data that comes out every year. 4, review of existing student investment account and continuous improvement plan documents. So those are 2 examples of the 6 that are now encapsulated in the integrated guidance. So those are plans that were already in place. 5, review of special programs account budgets. So those are high school success, the SIA, career technical education, and early indicator intervention systems. So those, by looking at the budgets, gives us an idea of where the planning is going, what the district is at as far as expenditures to inform the plan. Number 6, we had a Pleasant Hill Improvement Team engagement on November 8th. And number 7, the student focal group interviews that were ongoing during the 22-23 school year. So utilizing our Jamie Stearns' position as student support advocate. And then she was polling students in and actually conducting, in many cases, one-on-one interview of students about their school experience. And for 8, Lane ESD, LCC, and the Lane Workforce Community Partners event at LCC. That was on January 13th, 2023. The next page are the identified needs. So again, going back and looking at the engagement processes that have already been done, and then the additional engagement processes that took place this last school year, there were 5 different needs that were identified. And some of these, again, are brought forward from the work that has already taken place. First one, develop social emotional learning supports. SEL is the process designed to support students' well-being and academic performance in areas such as self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationships, skills, and responsible decision-making. Second one, develop learning teams that quickly respond to students' social and emotional instructional needs. Teams identify and make regularly to analyze data, reflect on student progress, and to create action plans that will improve instructional effectiveness and outcomes. Number 3, develop written K-12 literacy strategies with identified progress monitoring targets and rules and corresponding professional development. So establishing K-5 to 6-8 in the 9-12 law. 4, develop multi-tiered systems of support aimed at increasing high-quality, well-rounded student learning. Multi-tiered system of support is a framework for enhancing the implementation of evidence-based practices to achieve important outcomes for every student. The framework builds a public health approach that focuses on organizing efforts to have adults and systems to be more effective. Number 5, increase career and college programs and support to help prepare and connect students for career and college opportunities. The Career and College Center with objectives aligned to organize increasing and tracking supports for students, such as FAFSA, college applications and scholarships, internships, resume building, career experiences, and so on. Any questions through the identified things that are coming so far? What does this mean? Can you give me some more information?
Was this written by our administration?
Say again.
Was this whole thing put together by budget? Or was it? And are we getting to a point where you're gonna tell us where we're at?
Yeah, that'd be some great conversation, yeah. Develop outcomes, so Pleasant Hill School District develops and implements a kinder, 6th and 9th grade transition program with specific attention to students with disabilities and students receiving tiered supports. So essentially it looks at, as you go through a school year, you're building in tiered supports and you're putting in. It might be a behavior support plan, it might be a special education identification and plan with identified goals. And the students are starting to make a transition either from teacher to teacher within a building, in which the processes need to be in place on how to hand that information off. Or what happens when we're 5th graders when we go from elementary to middle school, and how do we get that information over to the middle school, so it's a seamless transition. And the same thing from the student from 8th grade and 9th grade. That's what number 1 goes with. Part of that also is staggered kindergarten start and then the springtime team meetings to discuss and transition to 5th grade student supports. 6th and 8th grade to 9th. Second, Pleasant Hill School District implements a focused approach on student, family, and staff, social, emotional learning, and educational supports, so providing professional development specific to SEL and creating systems that provide equitable access to SEL support students, schools, community. 3, care and data teams are formed at each school to produce student data to inform decision-making processes specific to individual student achievement. So develop a model of tiered supports and corresponding systems and guidelines. We're using the model in the adult teams to form decision-making processes to increasing student achievement. 4, comprehensive literacy strategies, including professional development plans for educators, for documented and communicated stakeholders. 5, school district will increase career and college readiness and supports, so development of a career and college center to coordinate. And 6, school district will increase high quality learning time and implement a system of academic supports to align professional development, team and data-driven systems of evaluation. Questions, thoughts? Next page, strategies supporting the outcomes. So identify 11 strategies. First one, implement a K-12 multi-tiered system of support to close out to the achievement gap. Implement culturally responsive pedagogy and curriculum for equitable learning outcomes for all. Provide equitable access for social behavior and mental health supports. Implement comprehensive counseling program with mental health supports that focuses on trauma abuse practices in SEL curriculum to improve culture and climate of our schools. 5, utilize an early warning indicator dashboard and data. 6, introduce all 9th grade students to college bound courses. 7, implement literacy support at the secondary level of instruction. 8, introduce all 8th grade students to CTE offerings. 9, 9th grade success or future success. So that's an actual position to all students in the 9th grade and navigate 9th grade. 10, modernize classroom space to support programs. 11, utilize early release days to design and particularly data systems for staff. And monitoring systems. Develop an aligned early release schedule with clearly defined activities that will lead to an effective implementation of articulated written systems that can be monitored for effective accountability. 2, teacher leadership stipends are already established and in place to lead and enhance development, communication, and implementation of systems aiming at increasing student achievement. 3, the Pleasant Hill Improvement Team and associated leadership stipends are in place to provide effective review, feedback, and guidance specific to plan implementation timelines and activities. And 4, administrative reporting timeline for the school board will be established in order to provide information, receive feedback, and guidance toward plan facilitation. And the last page there is around the universal targets, which I have to pull onto. And simply big back again for where we're at. Easy answer to that would be really pretty beginning phases. Strategy supporting outcomes. It's page 7 on the slides. So at the beginning of last year, and some of this stuff was already in place, but really kind of in a silo. So Deborah and Whitney, we're working at the elementary level on, and more in tune with reading. There's idea of a care team, and we bring data for that care team. What is the data showing, and what kind of scores can come out of that? So this last year, we just expanded on it with the model that I brought from Springfield. As far as behavior continuing, and more students involved, whether they would be seeing this basically at a tier 1, very first stage, and they would receive all district supports. That would be beginning of the year, rodeo, have school rules and expectations. Some all students receive. All the way up to, say, a tier 3 student, I have a very specific behavior support plan or identified goals attached to an IEP. And then all those tiers in between, as far as the student, whether their needs are, whether it's behavioral or academic or accommodating. We are still, it's probably one of the biggest lists we have. So we're still getting that language involved in 6-12, especially. The second one, implement culturally responsive pedagogy and curriculum for equitable learning outcomes. And this goes along with the SEL curriculum and support. So last year started to implement with Laney SD's help, professional development for staff on social emotional learning, what is social emotional learning, how do you talk about relationships, how do you have relationships within your classroom. And so those are in very beginning basis. Number 4, implement comprehensive counseling program, mental health supports. So the work that we've had the counselors do this last year is to work on early release days to start to build and utilize the state of Oregon's standards for building a comprehensive counseling program. And so that's the work that they've done. That work will now go on the website for elementary, for high, and essentially what it looks like in the district as well. Working with building administration, they'll put together a calendar of what the supports look like for this year. It is a practice that's already in place at the elementary school. It'll be a new practice for the high school as far as comprehensive program counseling. With that, then last year we had an on-site counseling program that was going through some changes, was not effective. We stopped that contract and then contracted with a third party, Care Solace. We'll continue that this next year. Care Solace, if the Care Solace does not offer the counseling services, they're the third party that helps families or students, and it's available for district staff as well to actually find a care provider and get in touch with that care provider. So we keep that off in the screen. So we're still asking for things on that as well as getting people connected. Number 5, early warning indicators of dashboard and data. Our student information system. It's about to go live, right? So
It's really close. It's
So,
really close.
our old system was called WebSys. WebSys is going away. In a consortium between Bentley, BSD, and some other districts, we are bringing online a program called Synergy. Synergy is what's used pretty widely around the state, especially in Lane County. At the same time, as part of the integrated guidance plan, we're working with Willamette ESD on what they call the Oregon Data Suite. So we will actually have a dashboard where we can see real-time data around regular attenders and it's all the longitudinal targets that we've actually identified. So regular attenders, our 3rd grade reading scores, our 8th, 9th grade on track, 4-year completers, graduation, and our 5th-year completers. Are all data that will have our fingertips in the dashboard, and then also be able to pull in at least part of the DIBELS work or data that the elementary collects as well. So we'll have that in the dashboard. Our data system, WebSys, was what was it called?
Argos.
What is it?
Argos.
Argos. So there's a separate piece as far as Argos for that data that was pulled out of WebSys or went straight into Argos that would create. And you didn't utilized it. Monkey at best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the dashboard is something that at least will is it's more widely used. We'll give the job this first year that we'll do it. Let's see where it goes. We've got another data system that we're having that the state is providing for us that we ran through Laney SD around. It's called Root Trails. It's specific to tracking career and technical education and career services. We talked about it as superintendents to see if Root Trails would build us a similar data suite as Willamette ESD is using. So we're looking at everything in one spot and not have a bunch of different data suites to use. But we've got that coming on for this fall. The 6th. Introduce all 9th grade students to College Now courses. That was part of the conversation that we started with the Midland High School this last spring and on building a master schedule that will allow that to happen. That will be something that will just have to take place over time and tracking as far as how many students have access to the College Now courses and to build a schedule so that can actually take place. 7, implement literacy support at the secondary level of instruction. Starting last December, we began DIBELS doing fluency. Was it just fluency? We did more than fluency. Just fluency. Fluency testing at the middle school. So we've got initial data around fluency for students. We did winter, and in the spring, we've got an EA position that is currently open, should be posted. To be able to start this and staffing and then help build the supports for students, but at least at the 6th grade level. So we have some data, taking a look at what our staffing availability is, and then starting to plug in some new supports for students, hopefully at least at the 6th grade level. And that's a start. 8, introduce all 8th grade students to CT offerings. Again, this is a scheduling piece. There's lots of good conversations that took place during our scheduling around high school teachers that actually do the CTE offerings and play them into the schedule. So the 8th grade students would have an opportunity to start to see what those offerings are before getting into high school. 9, 9th grade success, future success. This is a position, and this position has been hired, and so we'll have a new person on board that will work with students on basically what does it take to be successful in a 9th grade setting, in an education setting, keeping track of the homework, what's due, building a lot of the soft skills that we know that our employers are looking for. Getting on time, being organized. That position has been hired. And modernized classroom space. So the HVAC, we're just finishing an HVAC process project over at the high school. We've got some water fountains going in at the elementary then. We still got the water fountain to fix over at the track. We're upgrading the electrical to the shop. I think we talked a little bit about that before. That will be a year-long process. Some of the equipment that we need is 40 some weeks out. We're hoping to actually start that project, though possibly before school begins in September. There's some excavation work so that EPUD can come out after we put in a vault as far as transfer the service over. But we've put it out to bid, awarded it, and waiting for basically parts and products to come in. So that will be a year-long project for upgrading the electrical. Finishing work also with the architect on redoing the forestry building and making that back into useful agriculture classroom space with the idea of moving the agriculture teacher and program out to that space, which will then free up essentially 2 classrooms in the building. We've got 1 position right now that will travel for some classrooms, so it's going to be good for that person eventually. Also looking to upgrade, or I guess, move the library to really one of the 21st century classroom. The library probably looks one school year, probably looks the same as my Stephen school year, which wasn't that long, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay. So architects is finishing the plan with that. What's a little bit different from that one is the forestry building. I've been working directly with Angela White as far as what she'd like to see a classroom space look like for an agriculture classroom. The library, would like to see plans put together, take those to Amy, the librarian, but also some students to get some feedback on that. Timing wise, what we're looking at is the possibility of getting the forestry building done, hopefully 5-minute break. Being able to move the ag classes out to the forestry building, then do a makeshift library in the ag classrooms that will then free up the library to get that work done all at once. If not, we have to break the library into 2 sections, work on one, and then move everything over to finished from the start forward, which is not going to be very cost effective. So that's the timing, logistics to take care of construction. 11, utilize early release days to design, govern, articulate data-driven systems for staff. And so this really began during our bargaining with the certified license group and being able to define what our early release days are. We added some definition to that and working with administrators and teacher teams to actually work on professional goal development. And we've identified what our release days will be useful in this next year. They're one professional development that helps us carry out this plan. Questions?
Are you gonna update these every year annually, or how does it work?
The integrated guidance plan is essentially it's a 4-year plan. And so as you'll see, when we get into our longitudinal targets, there's a 5-year plan with the idea that in the 4th year, you're doing, or sorry, after your 4th year, you're starting that next year redeveloping the plan. And then the year after that, it goes forward. If the state sticks with the same. That ends up, yeah.
How often are you going to inform us like of the progress of this stuff, like every 3 months, a couple months, or?
And that's what I'd like to get into and talk more when we get into our checklists and to see if you guys have feedback as far as how much you want, when you want it. Some of it can be more regular, others will be different stuff. As I said, if we get into it, we want.
We're going to look at the comparison of developed. Oops. He had it really sensitive. The outcome, the strategies, do they address the developed outcomes on a one-to-one basis? Are they trying to come up with a strategy for everything? Is that?
Yes, strategies to at least address, but not necessarily 1-to-1.
Okay.
What you'll the development of these plans can become very cumbersome. I keep things pretty simple in the sense that there are many strategies that will cross over with many different outcomes. And so what you'll see is that majority of the strategies you will find, and they will exist in every single outcome. And I say that we would focus on anything that we would focus on the strategy as far as our data work goes, and that would naturally lead into the outcome.
For what it's worth, that rundown was extraordinarily helpful for me to hear what exactly is happening. It was super helpful.
It's when you spent many hours going through and developing and writing and rewriting and editing and sharing and rewriting. And we come out of it sometimes going, gosh. We hope to keep it simple, so that's, thank you for doing that. So part of this also is sitting down with two individuals from Langley SD who are the liaisons or representatives. That work also with the state, so they essentially gather some information from the state and then work directly with the districts and bring it, put this together, so the state's not having to talk with every district individually. I'd say they were very helpful as well, as far as just reinforcing that it's okay to use the same strategies, and many different outcomes. And then Garth and Deborah said that we can kind of launch student targets as well. So everybody will be launch student targets. So again, 5 longitudinal targets. And these, when I say longitudinal targets or universal targets, these are targets that every district in the states, has to have a guidance plan.
Sorry, do they have to have these exact ones? Or you just have to come up with, the district has to come up with one?
No, so at a minimum, every district will have these 5 targets. And in addition, if they want their own local metrics that they already have in place, then they can add to those as well. This is the first time you're seeing these. It's a little bit different in the process. What the state expected with these was they set these out, looked at our past achievement data, our past graduation rate, the rate of our tender data, and then provided really kind of an idea of what we think our plan would be or what our targets would be to reach over time. Submit that to the state then looks at it. They had a couple of fixes for us that were pretty small. We fixed it, and then we actually met with a Zoom meeting with 2 individuals from the state. One of them dealing with, I guess, more of the data piece and understanding Excel and cells, and the other one, maybe really more of a school-based education background. The other two we had with it. So sorry for the small type. This was in order to get this on as few pages as possible. But the 5 targets. So we're looking at 5 different targets, and they're not necessarily in order once we get into the spreadsheet, but they're regular attenders. So attendance data. 3rd grade English language arts, which is the Smarter Balance. 9th grade on track to graduate rate. So that's essentially at the end of 9th grade year, what we see is that there's no 9th graders that are credit deficient towards having the credits they need to be on track to graduate. 4th one, 4-year cohort graduation rate. So those are students who are graduating in their cohort after 4 years, so basically on time. And the last one is a 5-year cohort completion rate. So students who will take an additional year or 2 to get their diploma. So the first metric, if you're looking on, I'm looking at this LGPs. And it's 4-year graduation rate. And this is going to be similar for each target. We can have a baseline target for all students, a stretch target for all students. Gap closing targets. Might actually help with you. So we'll start. This is the grade you're seeing first. Okay, so this is our data that has been taken over the years. You see, it's going to have a lot of gaps in due to. I mean, the big one is going to be the pandemic. But if you go across, so the baseline target of all students for their 4-year cohort, you're going to see that 17, 18, 18, 19. This is the actual data, so 80.65%. Graduation rate on time, 91.46, 87.10, 88.10, 87.65, 86.8. this is the data that we took, examined, considered the pandemic, considered the reliability of the data that was actually being taken at that point in time. In order to then, if you go to the next page, that would be Heather, we discuss on it, come up with our longitudinal targets. And again, the 3 areas that you're looking at as they go down is a baseline for all students, a stretch target for all students, and then a gap closing for us is what we're referring to as focal group students or students that are generally underserved. And so for a 4-year cohort graduation for the 23-24 school year, that's what we're looking at, a baseline target of all students to have a graduation rate of 88%. So those students that or either our students as 9th graders, or maybe they've been transferred into us and then became our students that in 4 years' time, they will graduate on time. The next number right below that, 89.5, is our stretch. So basically, if things are going really well and we're hitting that 88% target, then we can stretch that to 89.5%. And the gap closing rate is 75%. And then those longitudinal targets are carried out. And again, it's either carried out over 5 years. So a 4-year plan. In that 5th year, the reason we got another set of targets in there in that 5th year is where we go through this whole process again and develop that whole process. And so that's why there's 5 years of data in the 4-year plan, because in that 5th year, we go through the process, put together that is planning. If you go on the 2nd page, it's got the targets that we developed. You also see we've got a 5-year trend. So you can see that we were trending up 1.1% in the baseline and 1.3% in the gap closing. And the next year, one down is the 5-year cohort completion. So students that take 5 years. We're looking in this first year, 92% would be our baseline, 93% be the stretch, and for our focus group students, 87.7%. Those numbers are obviously a lot higher because we're talking about much fewer students. The 9th grade on track, 3rd section down, baseline 85.2%. Stretch 86%, and the focal group having 79% of our students, focal group students on track to graduate. Also note if you go over on that one, you'll see some sections that it just has a little carrot, the greater than 95%. For the purpose of the state of doing the data, once you hit that 95% and above, they just track it with a little carrots first, greater than 95%. 4th section, 3rd grade ELA. So our baseline, again, 46% of our students meeting achievement standards, our stretch 47.5%, and our focal group, the gap is getting that to 32.43%. And regular attenders, baseline of 70.94%, stretch of 75.5%, and the gap closing 48.47%.
I was looking at the 3rd grade language arts, and that seems incredibly low to me. But then I started looking at state numbers, and everybody's more or less in the same boat. Why?
And we said,
But it was the same type of numbers, high 40s, maybe certain 80, 50 in 2017.
oh, and so it really gets to the function of a test. Part of this is looking at social emotional learning. There's so much of it. What's this? My youngest son will come home and tell me, there's a little bit of the idea that he grows up in a house with an educator. But he'll also come home and tell me that the state tests are really not that difficult. We just have to be able to stay focused for a really long period of time. And we have some societal factors that play into this where this is some of my personal opinion as well now, but we get into where we want instant satisfaction, instant gratification, and a quick change of venue or entertainment by just a click of a switch, and getting kids to sit down for a test and concentrate for a long period of time. Somebody you very sick, somebody is sorry to do
I
that.
just finished third grade, I know that.
Do you want to add anything?
The construct of the test has changed 3 times in this period of time, I can tell you that. And unfortunately, screen became not so friendly with kids. I mean, I just about cried. I had a student who said, I want to take the test with you in your office. I need it to be perfectly quiet. I'm like, okay, great. We'll clear my calendar. We'll find a time. That student finished their test in 22 minutes. Do you know how many questions were on the test? 22. And they sat there and they just had a quick test. Because they're long passages, they have to scroll, they have to hold on to information. And then they've got to go answer all these questions. They can scroll back and look, but it's not, you know, word for word. You have to make some inferences. You've got to use your higher thinking skills. It's tough. And they're just like, oh. You know, and I talked afterwards because I have to be very careful, being the building principal and the test coordinator for the district. It's like, so how'd you feel? Oh, this is the easiest thing I ever did. Okay. You go enjoy class. I'll see you later. But yeah, it's a tough test.
Is doing it not on a computer an option?
No, not at this point. We have not gone back to give them pencil. But there's been many a time I personally have sat thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have this in paper and pencil? I mean, I hate to go back to when I first ever started administering. What used to be called Oaks way back when. It was all paper and pencil. And was it fun? No. Were those books thin? No, they were about that thick. But the kids took their time. And they knew, hey, I get one story done. I just want to call it for the day. We can't tell them how far to go. We just have to keep saying, good job, try your best. You can do this.
There's I've tried many different options as an elementary principal. As far as how much time we put into tests and how much time it takes away from instruction and really kind of relationships. But you can go as far as going deeply into the instruction of how to utilize the tools on the actual screen, how to make the actual text area a little bit larger with the questions to the side, how to go back, how to flag.
And that's all part of what our staff does is best practices. We talk about what are those best practices. They spend approximately 1 to 2 weeks before we even open the test. Just working on best practices. They can use previous practice tests. They can prep those. So that the kids do get a feel for it in a different medium, but when it comes down to it, we have to do it online. There are some students who we can give accommodations to, but we're very limited as to those that we can do that with.
Many of our kids with executive function challenges and attention challenges and short-term working memory challenges, which unfortunately describe a large population of our students with disabilities. It's just really challenging. That's the environment that they're not very familiar with at all, you know, and so it's taking a lot of like, okay, is there any content that is challenging for you, and now you're layering on all these other structural difficulties, and then things you have to navigate, and things you have to try to remember how to do. It's an imperfect system, you know, we have to have something, so we have something, you know, but it's not always the best design. And as a result, not always the best when we show up our students actually know what to do. Exactly.
Is there some other set of data that shows our third graders truly are proficient outside of, I mean, because obviously changing things with the test is a very big shit to turn, but. You know, are we collecting some other data that says our,
Yes. We are collecting Bibbles data and we watch that data constantly. So every grade level team is talking, how's my data looking? We implemented a new model this past year, the walk to read model, where we started differentiating closer to their skill sets and moving kids in and out of groupings. We had a great big celebration at our last staff meeting. I'll be perfectly honest. I walked in and I'm known to bake. When I'm stressed, I bake. I bake to celebrate. I do all kinds of craziness. But we had a celebration. I just handed out all the Dibbles data and I said, guys, look at this. Look where we were in the fall in kindergarten. And we went line by line and the growth that happened was incredible. And so then we started talking about, why did we get that growth? What does that look like? And then someone brought up, oh, but my OSAS. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not talking OSAS. I could care less right now. Let's celebrate what our kids are doing. So we spend a lot of time looking at that Dibbles data.
is that something you'd be able to share with us?
Yes, I can share that.
Because I'm like wanting to highlight this in red and make this the thing, but I also understand the state testing needs.
Right. Right, and we already know that our state tests are changing again this coming year. I've already been given heads up warning as the district test administrator. The window is going to be narrowed. And the amount of time that the test is open will be much shorter than what it has been in the past. I mean, for some of our kids, they've been able to keep the test open for 40 days. And I'm sat with them for 40 days to get those tests closed. This year it's gonna be 20 days.
The example of that, like a reporting function. I mean, 3 times.
Yeah.
Yearly, when we do the Bibbles testing, actually we pay for it too.
Yeah.
We talk about reading proficiency. Reading is extremely complex in the sense that when we start talking about proficiency, if you can read fluently, does that mean you're proficient? If you can read fluently, or if maybe you're not a fluent reader as far as a score, that's standardized, but you can comprehend, does that make you a proficient reader? And reading is really about being able to make inferences, understand vocabulary, being able to use resources to research vocabulary, to be able to read at a particular rate, fluency, to be able to have the ability to stick with it, with a long passage. I know that every book we pick up, the first few pages or chapter may not be interesting to us, but if we push through it, we might get a little further into it and actually start developing some interest. The test works in the same way as far as developing those other skills with a student, that if they jump in and those first few questions, they just don't get it. And how do they get past that to really get to questions that, okay, now I've gotten the role, I have to understand this, and go back and do those questions later on versus just immediately getting in each student brings their different skills, which should be tested as well.
Scores the slow say nobody's counting. I mean, unless you've got people scoring in single digits, you don't have anybody scoring in 80s and 90s. You can't, not to get this. I'm assuming this is an average or a mean, not a median.
Right.
Yeah, so no one's doing well. I mean, they can't be.
But we have some really high achievers.
But I guess what I'm wondering is, what if you were to score 100? Is that somebody's expectation that if you were a proficient reader, you'd score 100?
And that's right. That's why I go back to say that there's not, while the state and the test makers can level this and say that if you're scoring X on a test, then we know over time, by the 3rd grader, that you are on track to be proficient. Now, when we start out, what does that mean as far as proficiency?
Right.
We've got a whole host of other students that have a great number of other skills that, because they can't read at a particular rate that would signal that they are releasing some executive functioning of their brain to be able to comprehend it and not just focusing on reading fast. That's just the complexity that goes into reading that we don't necessarily think about. I've had long conversations with parents where they don't see that their student is doing very well, and so we'll pull out the different test scores that we take between fluency or comprehension or specific vocabulary test, and try and put that all together as far as everything that it takes to actually read, and the things that we don't think about when we see a word, how we've already broken that down, and how quickly our brains are actually processing it versus what the third grader has, especially third grader in today's society that has been in school for.
Not very long.
It's extremely complex. Not to mention the tests builders are actually building different styles of comprehension questions that unless you've actually sat in a room with a PhD student from the University of Oregon that developed these tests, you and I would never really understand what they said they're trying to get out of the comprehension question. So these targets, we've actually met with Department of Education, went through them one by one, and have them.
So I'm just curious to kind of to go back really quick to the ELA stuff. We looked at all the strategies that we have in place. Obviously, we can't go into homes and tell parents less screen time or reading. Other than a strategy where we teach to the test, what's one of the strategies that we went over earlier is geared towards like what can we actually control to actually improve the skills the student have and not just have them do better on the test.
A lot of that's being provided for us now, the new legislation and actually utilizing the science of reading, which we utilize anyway, which is letter recognition, letter sounds, starting to blend those together, start with CBC words like cat, and then slowly you read into reading passages and you work on later passage. Teacher will develop vocabulary through reading, through word walls. So a number of strategies already in place. I would say that for experience of being an elementary principal, that's only part of it. That becomes very dry for some students, especially students that are ready to read. And so we really got to look at the whole picture as far as there's a holistic strategy as far as reading goes, as well as training students on to authors from different styles of writing and getting excited about reading. But as far as improving test scores and getting students going from learning to read and reading to learn, it's the science of reading is really where we see the biggest bang as far as for a school and district. And it is what we have in place.
Okay. I know we're required to have this one on here, but would it make more sense to, even though it's on here, focus on DIBELS or some other metric rather than this, just knowing a lot?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we want to see that that we're progressing from fall to spring.
Right.
And that we're sending kids on to the next grade, ready for the next grade.
Right.
And if this isn't a fair assessment, then as long as we have some other data set that says we are making progress.
What I would say is that internally, through everything that we have in the plan, if we are doing those strategies and take care of those strategies, we will see outcomes take place on here. Now, things like physically having ninth graders on track for graduation, like go and actually grab the student into the class, have the teacher make phone calls, have them sit down and work with that assignment to get that assignment in to actually get done and actually get that credit. That is very concrete in being able to do that. And so seeing those kind of, I think, rates of achievement have a lot more chance as far as going up faster than an ELA score. What I'd say is all the things that we are still doing in the classrooms, the reading instruction, that we continue to do those things, strengthen those things. We have nutrition teachers, leader teachers comes in, professional development activities, and then the outcomes that we will see changing the outcomes through this. But I think what we're getting at is the reporting stuff, like what is happening behind the scenes that's informing this kind of stuff. Because honestly, we will not see this again until we meet at the end of next year, or when we come back in September, October, when our data has been the embargo's been taken off, we can actually share it. So this is really something.
Yeah, we're under embargo right now. I mean, I've gotten to see our data. I can't talk about it. And I told Jim, I said, I can't even explain it to you because they changed the format this year, so we're all waiting.
Was there any, has like this newer approach, include ways that teachers can combat the way that screens have impacted attention spans and not to mention kids just aren't used to being in school?
So part of it is finding that golden nugget, which I think our elementary staff does a really good job of, student engagement. What can we do to increase our student engagement? So looking at student interest and helping them channel into their interest areas. You know, getting that small group reading with the walk to read model has helped a lot of kids because they didn't want to be with the kids who were way up here or way down here. They need to be more aligned with their peer group. We have a new initiative. So eventually, according to the State Department, I just got in a meeting last week before last, one of the weeks, I've been all over the place lately. We have the Oregon Early Literacy Framework that's coming. There will be dollars attached to that. Eventually, that will be integrated into the integrated guidance program, but we will be getting grant dollars in about October to start looking at what else that we do. Right now, the state doesn't quite have a menu for us, but I've got this great new booklet in my office. I have about 120 more pages to download in that booklet because I don't like to have a hyperlink and then right in the middle of reading something and it says, go check out this hyperlink. So I'll insert that in there so that I have that. There are some new strategies that they're recommending. We'll have some conversation whether or not those are going to be feasible strategies for our district to move reading forward. One of the things that I do work with our staff on the minute out on, I know Jim did it too when he was an elementary principal, is we get a blueprint every year as to what the state thinks is going to be on the test. And so we'll talk through that blueprint and we'll go figure out which standards match that blueprint and make sure that we're really honing in on the standards. We're doing the best we can. And, you know, we'll continue to do everything that we can to get our kids reading, writing, whatever we need to do.
I think Steve, what you're getting at is really a sense of culture as well, which is what myself and my team working on within the district. And so is in a nutshell that idea of what does mental toughness look like and feel like and sound like? What does it mean to kind of be vulnerable, to really dig into something that's difficult and to kind of work through it over time? I can tell you, working at the middle school and high school, especially middle schools, D's and F's, once they go from a standards-based grading system into a DNF or an A through F system, all of a sudden your D's and F's just climb. It's usually we can take it back to the students, just not turning in the homework. They were turning the homework, they would pass the class. And so you get a new semester, a student is just gonna, they're gonna do it, I'm in it, and the first 2 weeks of school is, yes, this is awesome. They've got A's across the board, turning in all the homework. And then all of a sudden, the project hits and they don't get it done, or they don't get it done in time. And then that's their first assignment that's got an F, and then everything stops. and then they just go back to it, just all that. So really kind of building in that culture and that process of no matter if it's band, choir, your sports, your classrooms, that it is it's not a one and done, it's like a marathon, it's just like an every day coming to work, back to your lunch. Getting after it, and if you don't, if the things don't work out exactly like you planned for them today, you make a plan, you come back tomorrow. And then they got, and make a plan, you come back the next day, and continue to work forward. And really kind of building that culture, and that's where I go back to, where my youngest would tell me, the tests really aren't that difficult. Just have to be able to focus and stay focused all the time to actually, because it's a multiple choice test, somewhere in there is the answer, and what is the reading. Put that in. I work at, and I can tell you that's exactly what we're hearing with the language force as well. And we also see is we're in the employers as far as the skills, as far as coming to work on time, coming to work day after day, coming to work week after week, not coming in 2 or 3 days within a week and then calling in sick the other 2 days, but day after day after day is what they're telling us. They're wanting the students that are coming in for the jobs.
And I mean, you kind of got to what I was going to bring up next. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything else about the reading stuff. I noted here, and we kind of talked about it when Drew and I met with you, that there's really not a whole lot here for middle school, especially at this district. Is like we're capturing stuff in 5th grade and again at 9th grade, and there doesn't seem to be, there's really nothing as far as like the 5 areas that the state said to check in before we hit 9th grade. And I've now got 2 kids of my own who've gone, like one is still in junior high, one who went through all of junior high. And what I hear consistently is they usually talk about the D's and F's, the skyrocket. They're just, from their perspective, there's not a whole lot of incentive to get good grades because from their understanding, their perception and mine as well, that there's nobody that gets held back at 8th grade because they've been failing other classes. All of our kids go on to 9th grade. So you're talking about one of the things we're going to be doing is that 9th grade success. But it feels kind of like a couple years late because they've already been supposed to, they've already kind of been in the high school way of classes of no homeroom anymore, no homeroom teacher that's really staying on top of stuff. It's just class to class. You're already doing this high school type stuff, but you don't get this future success stuff for 3 years. And so we've developed 3 years of bad habits and not caring about grades, and all of a sudden we're supposed to turn that Titanic around. But in order to get them graduated, and just for myself, one board member, I would really like to see something added to this or something outside of this, either way, that brings that back in some way to track how we're doing those 3 years. There's just feels like a huge gap there that I think may make it harder for us to get where we want to be with the graduation rates, the cohort stuff, 4-year cohort. Yeah, especially with the whole perception, and again, it's 2 kids out of 3 other grades, but that there's really no incentive at this point for those middle schoolers that we don't need to do the work. Really, we don't like. And I think it's kind of trickled down to some of the behaviors. And again, this is just for the eyes of 2 kids, but it just seems like it's not only setting them up to have a harder time to get back on track by, and not all students, but a lot of them by 9th grade, but also might be impacting staff. I mean, I don't know that for sure. It just would seem like my own experience working with kids and being kind of in a somewhat similar profession that would, you'd have those 2 different issues. So,
Yeah.
just throwing that out there, it's not obviously something we're gonna tackle today.
This next school year, every student 6 through 8 will have something akin to future success. In terms of really looking at study skills and things like that, we're calling 6th grade middle school success, kind of with the same idea.
Okay.
To get them prepared, and the 7th and 8th graders will also be receiving that with a little bit of career exploration, things like that.
Okay.
Is there any metric you had in mind that you would like to measure?
I don't know if it's, well, I think the big thing for me is this whole thing about, because we saw the stuff towards the end of the last school year where there were a ton of. We were really concerned about one grade in the middle school that had a ton of D's and F's. And I think that kind of goes back, that has to, it feels like it rings true what my kids are telling me, that there's just no incentive for these kids. And that's not something necessarily you can set a target for. But what are we doing to, what's the carrot here? What's the carrot to say, well, yes, actually, it does matter, or not. You're gonna go to 9th grade, but still, your time here is gonna be better. There's something that's gonna be more enjoyable, something along these lines, so that there's some incentive to not, when you hit a bump and like, crap, I got an F on this, well. You know, what do I bother?
Yeah.
Probably not supposed to say this, but hold a couple back and the rest will realize.
I thought I would, so possibly. Uh,
Peek into my parents.
Understanding that our grading system, A through F, is imperfect. And number 2 on the strategies around implementing culturally responsive pedagogy and curriculum for learning outcomes for all. There's a lot of professional development in there around, we started some of this work with the staff this last year in developing their course outlines. So we actually know what it is that we teach, tying those to assessments, but really making that connection as to what am I teaching? Why is it important? Because if there is no connection for a student, then there is no care to move on. And so we have to be careful that if a student is getting into their F, is it because they don't know the material, or is it perhaps because they're not connected and they're not turning into homework? Which is generally the case. I mean, tracked this data for about 10 years, most of the Springfield, and it's probably the same data here. 33% of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are failing at least one course. Very close. And it's because they're not turning in work. It's because they're not connected. Their states to send back to social emotional learning supports and relationships, how to connect with students, how to be involved in school, how to get them involved with activities. The CTE courses giving the figures a chance to be able to see this is what we've got coming as far as a class ahead of you, having them be able to work with our CTE teachers so that they can get in front of them and say it's important that you're learning the outcomes in math because they're going to connect to the work that we're doing here. Talking to them about career related jobs. What is it that you would like to do? Getting them involved with our career related activities so we can private employers see what is out there as far as jobs. And that electrician looks really promising. You're going to have to understand algebra to be able to pass the test to get on the list to be able to find an apprenticeship to actually go to work. And so it's working with staff and community and buildings, but it's just middle school is what we call it, a bit of education. It's difficult and there's no cares. But a lot of what you're talking about is built within the strategies. As far as getting it out, we just don't have any of the tricks. But the strategies are.
We ever thought about with one that we want to.
Well, I mean, we're gonna be looking overall at consistent attendees. I'm assuming that's over the entire school district, and
It is, we can break that out like great.
yeah, I think if nothing else, it would be really good if we're doing the reporting to the board, not whatever the frequency is the board agrees to, but that we're seeing specifically for the middle school. And again, we saw that report last school year with the number of Ds and Fs, and I don't know, that's where I take it back to admin team. If something like that is a good gauge to let us know if these strategies are working or if there's a better thing, because we'd also talked about, I think this is kind of separate, that we'd also talked about carrying over dibbles into middle school, do that testing there. And obviously, again, this is a big thing to do, so not necessarily something we can start immediately, but we have some kind of plan in place to get there. But definitely, as just myself, would like to see what attendance looks like for middle school students. And if not the grade breakdown that we had seen before, then what the admin team feels will be a better illustration of whether or not we're improving, whether or not our strategies are working, especially at just that 6th to 8th grade.
When I think continue with the Ds and Fs, breaking that out further as far as not just reporting on the how many Ds there were, the how many Fs there were, I think we can drill down a little further to actually come back and say, out of that, teachers or students are reporting that it is, Ds and Fs are due to homework completion. And then that's a corrective measure to go back to say, why aren't kids turning in? And again, I remember these things. We've had teachers actually do no homework, and so they rearranged the way in which they taught during their day to be able to do a lot of teaching up front, an opportunity for homework at the second half of the class. Come back the next day, pick up where they left off with the homework, and making sure the kids actually are having time within class to be able to guide them. And this gets back to the pedagogy. I've had teachers, math teacher in particular, that would assign, not necessarily even assign, a number of math problems. That would tell the students, you need to be able to. So here's the list. You have 50 problems in your algebra book. You need to pick one from each section and demonstrate to me that you know what is it you're doing, and then rather than doing like a standard 10 points per homework page, which doesn't really make sense. We do that just as ease of calculation. He would just do a 1 or a 0. He either demonstrated it, you got a 1, or he didn't demonstrate, you got a 0. It didn't end with just 0. And then within his room, he had to set up whiteboards, because then you would have different problems that they wanted students to go and demonstrate what to do, and then space for the room for 2 students to work at a time on the problem. They work through a problem, and you got out of the classroom and actually see their work. And actually, they're actually doing it correctly in the time, and they had a chance to go back, demonstrate their homework, and then their one. So it's less about being able to do a certain amount of problems to get 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 to be passing, and more about actually demonstrating how to meet the standard of the objective of the lesson being taught, which is believe it or not, is a change in the way that so many of our teachers teach. I've got Dibbles reporting, Ds and Fs, we're going to go down a little bit further, regular attenders, and then even thought about the idea of we got to find a way to be able to get some information, some anecdotal information from our middle school students to be able to inform what we're doing as far as schools, quick survey as far as connectedness to school, what activities are involved in, what do you like best about school, and plan some of those things.
That all sounds good to me. I don't know if anybody else has any preferences or ideas.
I see whether different.
Yeah, I got this for it. Yeah.
That's not enough.
Anything else with integrated guidance? Longitude. Okay, so next one, board meeting checklist and time. Next in your package should be just a review of the calendar that you already approved. Let's just get this back in front of you. You already have it there in your calendar. The page after that gets into the actual checklist. So, looking to develop, since this IG plan is a 4-year plan, is that in this first year's, utilize some of today, we're working on through the months as far as identifying what months we come forward to you with what business items, what reports. But then over the course of the year, there are things that are added to add this in, so they're not guessing year after year, that we'll have a template to move forward with next year. We want to make adjustments as far as reports and adjustments for reports. But that first slide there is checklist for July. We started forward and easy. Obviously, they're in that now. So financial report, what I've learned from Sherry is that because of the date in which she has her items available from the bank, that financial reports are generally do have to, they're available after the 10th, so she needs to reach the 10th to go have it done. And she, I believe, she had one person. Personnel action will always be its all meetings, we have personnel, licensed personnel. In the night, we know toward the charge meeting in the people August. So September. In September, we right now has got one meeting. So principal's elementary report, so including elementary, and we talked about doing a separate middle school and high school report. It's on middle school. Financial report on the 11th. In personnel action, and each meetings with license that we would have that. Talk about my evaluation, we'll be doing executive session for that, and then on September 28th, we have our work session first of the group. For equity. October, 2 meetings in October. We've got October 2nd, and executive session will continue. We'll finish up the evaluation goals. The first meeting, though, student of the month, most improved, an enrollment report, and then people on high school reports, or also updates as needed. It happened in the month of October. Our Division 22 report will happen in the second meeting. Integrated guidance annual report. And I think this is getting into what would look like. Because by the 16th, our data should be ready.
Yeah. We should go.
So we would have this. What we should have ready for you in 2nd October is the at a glance, our state report information. So our chief data report development time. And then as you think about the integrated guidance plan, we have a longitudinal targets with that as well each October. Quarterly financial reports, enrollment reports, facilities reports. And again, that integrated launching targets could actually be part of the SIA report at the same time. November. One board meeting, one work session. So go back again, most improved elementary reports. Sorry, the enrollment report, the elementary report, the high school reports, and the annual audit if it's done. A SPED report and TAG report. And then November 16th will be part 2 of the board work session. Yeah, we're looking ahead. You have an idea of when your Dibbles.
Dibbles will not be ready until February because we will do universal screening right before semester.
Okay. And then we'll plug in D's and F's. Middle school best around quarter time or waiting towards that semester.
We can absolutely do, quarters.
Okay, so we'll start to plug that in the quarter time. It's a quarter bit.
And we should be universal screening in September. We're doing this.
So we're doing
Like end of September.
initial screenshot of it's the. Doesn't tell the story, so the Dibble, that initial screening is just that baseline where the students are starting to hear out. Of interest. We can see that second line where there was some decision making process is going. As far as you see growth and what happens at a grade level. It's interesting dynamics. Sometimes it depends on the test, but you'll see second grade, for instance, before second grade, the winner. For some reason, was this.
Yeah, guacamole.
Yeah.
No, the words.
I mean, I suppose most of those two data points, it's not. Yeah,
It's nice to know where they start out. It's nice.
I mean, as far as we have to like bring it.
I think we could include that. I would agree. My suggestion is that we wait till about the end of this first one and next year we decide something different, but at least we'll have two data points. Moving into December, so we'll have one meeting, one executive session, along with the current progress on my evaluation. Student amount was approved, enrollment, elementary, middle, high school reports. We now have a financial report. It's to January. 2 months, or sorry, another one for me. Student of the month, enrollment, principals, reports. That's for recognition month, school counseling, week, for enrollment, for the financial, local ESD service plan is to be presented and improved that month. And then we start to advertise for budget members. February, 2 meetings. First one, so we have the eval document sent out to the board. Superintendent and my evaluation. And a self-evaluation redone. June of the month, enrollment, elementary, enrollment, high school principals reports. Financial report will be ready by the 12th. The next meeting after that, I got penciled in on the 26th to go to meet executive session for finalize my evaluation for the classified appreciation. The cohort recommendation is we bring the enrollment report to you and actually start to set what classes we might have as far as the volunteer boundaries, how much we have to take students in. So we set different cohorts, bring recommendations for action that meeting. I believe the lunch student targets report. I thought this might be a good time if we're doing it, and also I guess what we did was to actually bring forward where we're at as far as students that are on track to graduate. Give you a very picture. So that way to be careful because we have so few students that say we've got 8 students that are on track to graduate that are seniors. It can be pretty easy sometimes to decide who those 8 students are. So I don't know what that data will look like for training, but I've got it on here to start to think about. And then in March, so we got the personnel action report within my evaluation. Student of the month, enrollment reports, approved by the committee. And then a final board work session for the equity training. April. Same, including the 2nd of the month, we got teacher appreciation week, our quarterly enrollment, quarterly financial, and then approving district calendar. May. 2 meetings, the first again is the reports. Second half of the month, we've got the annual designation of officers and clerks, and our first budget meeting. June. Likely 2 meetings, so the first one is our reports. We've got a budget adoption meeting in there on the 10th. And the 17th financial reports, opportunity for a district transfers report, some students we have coming in. And then again, longitudinal targets report to be a 6, 7. Approved for the budget calendar next year. So overview of what we had coming, and then adding the Dibbles reports in February, quarterly reports for middle school B's and F's. We have a regular attendance report that are coming in. And rather than I think just giving you what our attendances look like, is really kind of digging down a little bit deeper by grade level, looking at detailed information. And then the fourth one is we'll work on the survey of middle school students. I'd say that will probably come at that earlier time as well. Other thoughts and then reporting for the timeline.
I didn't hear student reports, so we still.
Yeah. So, question that would be, as far as the outline of this is, we do reports during the same time of the month as the elementary and middle school. Sometimes that information can be redundant, or bringing students in when we have them at the second part of the year and having them come into that second half before we get to do business.
I think for them to get cut out and ones that we don't have 2 meetings.
Hate to have them cut out. Like
Yeah.
Have them
If
cut
if they're just gonna go to the second meeting of the month that we don't have one.
So to have them come each month. Okay, yeah. So I think what I would like to do, especially if it's going to be like the high school, is God, that we have them come each month. We're just going to spend some time as far as redundancy, as far as information. So I think if you just work with them as far as where did you have on a report, what they're doing recording. Yep, now we're gonna have to get about one place.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. In-service calendar, you've got, we've got a few things around synergy. We've got our new teacher orientation. Which day? The Wednesday, the 30th. I think Stephen, you're out, right? And Drew's coming in for the board. You're next, but you're all.
Yeah.
You're all invited on that Wednesday, August 30th for a morning, and all staff get together.
Which one was it again?
August 30th.
Wednesday, August 30th.
So
Not in the morning to be able to do it anymore, unfortunately.
that work thing. Now it's 23.
I will be out of country.
Not state, that.
I win.
And it's an opportunity to be able to come. It just kind of builds some excitement around school year. So anyone that would like to, and if no one can, you can't, there's somebody that'd like to come, all 3 of you are coming. Do a brief introduction. Want to say, excited to be here. We're good. Anyway, you don't let me know right now, but anyway, it's Wednesday, August 30th, we start with breakfast at 7:30 in the student center. All right.
You know, if I was here. Working in with that.
The next one we've got is OSBA Annual Convention, which is November 9th through the 11th. Checked in real briefly with Jen, we just went through the summer conference and been to the event as well. Report to have a great time. Learned a lot. Maybe during our board communication show, we could have wanted to. But wanted to talk to the board about, or let to see as far as being available to attend as a board, the annual convention, November 9th through 11th. I think we've gone to that time. If you, as far as a board, or if you wanted to, even as individuals, as many people as possible, then that could be known, start waiting for the registration process and we'll start with the plans for that. Who has gone to the November conference?
What are the dates again?
November 9th, 10th and 11th.
It's important.
Also on September 12th, the Lane region of OSBA has a meeting. That they invited us to.
I'll send that out. That's at 90 ST. in town.
Never mind it.
I haven't seen it yet. I know they're close. All day, weird things. All right, so let us know on the OSBA annual convention. Self-evaluations. Did we get any of that put together? We scrapped it.
You have that. Wake me up over there.
So the question would be this, is do I spend a little bit of time on the evaluations, bring that back for another meeting? And then just review on our own the 5 policies that were in there. And I can carry over superintendent operating agreements to another meeting.
I assume our names are there because those are ours.
Well, yeah, and I didn't even, like I sent out the email to everybody as to ask for volunteers without even reading the agenda. Some board chair didn't even review the agenda for the meeting. So I did, I think I did the. Yeah. I did the one was like 7 pages. I took that one on, so I didn't prepare to do the others that are actually assigned to me on here.
So here's what I would suggest, since we're at 7, is the reviewing superintendent operating agreements is to move to September.
All right,
The policy review is, you've got those in your back packet, you can just review on your own time. And if there's questions or things that want to be brought up in September, we can use the board communication part to moving that. And then board self-evaluations would be the piece sort of one with that piece, because that might be helpful in developing some goals.
yeah, I think since this is the charge meeting, we should definitely not skip this part of the board evaluation.
Okay.
Want me to run through those?
Sure, since you compiled it all. That'd probably be faster.
Okay. We had performance standards. I'll just read the kind of the bold part of the performance standards. Leadership, mission, vision, and goals. The board annually reviews the district's vision and mission statement and annually adopts board goals which support the district vision and mission. Our average score on that was 1.75, and we basically had a good, acceptable, or unacceptable. unacceptable, I signed up 1, 2, acceptable 2, good 3. So a score of 1.75 would be slightly below acceptable. And the only comment really said that as a board, we were more reactive than proactive. So we needed to get ahead of some things. And I know when we talk here about reading the district's vision and mission statement or reviewing it, that's been some time since that was actually done. So the next standard was policy and governance. Board establishes and follows local policies, procedures, and good governing practices. The score on that was a 3. So everyone agreed we were doing a good job of that. The comment was basically to inform the public about changes within policies. When the policy changes, try and get the information out to the public beyond just the discussion of the board meeting. If anybody has any other comments, jump in. 3, community relations. The board establishes and promotes effective communication with parents, students, staff, and community members. Score was 2, so acceptable was the average score there. Comment was basically to encourage more public comment at meetings, and the student reports have been beneficial. Then 4, cultural responsiveness and early educational equity. The board develops and promotes, understanding and awareness of cultural diversity and ensures fair and equitable policies, practices, and educational opportunities for all members of the educational community. The score on that was a 1.5, so it was somewhere below acceptable and unacceptable. There were a couple of comments there, and it was kind of the board needs more information to monitor this progress. I think on our future agenda here, we're dealing with a lot of that. I don't think we know necessarily, you had a comment as to what minority groups we do have and what their populations are. And it's something that's difficult for us to monitor with the information. Yeah. Number 5, accountability and performance monitoring. The board monitors progress towards district goals and compliance with written board policies using data as the basis for assessment. That was a score of 1.5, so it was between 1.75, excuse me. Between unacceptable and acceptable. And I ended up with a summary comment of more information needed. I think that's more data is needed for the board to feel confident that progress is being made with the students. And we did talk about that tonight. Number 6, board operations meetings. Board meetings are effective, efficient, orderly, and respectful. Board members focus on the policy and governance roles of the board. The score on that was 2.75. And one of the comment was more polling of board members. So when we're talking about a topic, running around and asking for more input from all board members, and it involved the entire board. 7, board operations, board member communications. Board members are all kept equally fully informed on matters of board business and communicate with each other in a respectful and lawful manner. The score on that was 2.5, so between acceptable and good. One of the comments was board chair should request input from all members prior to agenda planning. I think that was in the form of like an email request, was what the comment. More detailed in. Myself, I know it's awful difficult. Because the chair and vice chair have a organizational meeting with the superintendent. And often get more information or more in-depth information. Than what the other board members may receive in the meeting. So it's kind of hard for all members to be equally informed. I know we talked about trying not to over discuss topics that were going to be on an agenda in a agenda setting meeting. So that when you did come to the board meeting, it was, more of an even discussion with all the members rather than two having a pretty deep background on it. And no one else knowing about it. Yep.
Question, in the past, have you had a practice where agenda goes out on a Thursday, board members review it, if a board member has a question, they'll send it to board chair, and then that board chair can forward it to me to be able to have an answer ready for the meeting?
I think in the past, well, the understanding, and this is my, I guess my understanding is that if any individual board member had a question about what was in the packet of the agenda, they would just contact the admin directly. But if you would prefer that it comes to me first, we can discuss that.
Well, it doesn't have to, just the idea of making sure that information is provided accurately. So if the board agenda goes out on a Thursday, Jennifer's got a question, she contacts me with that question. I guess the operating agreement would be then my answer, the question would then go out to everybody with the answer being provided. So the idea.
Yeah, kind of like what we do with what Sherry does when we're doing the budget.
Yeah, and so there's also differentiating between when an answer can be provided like that, and when an answer might be best to bring forward to a public discussion. Okay.
How does everybody else feel about that?
Talking about agendas specifically, not any question we might have. If I called you with some question that I have nothing to do with the agenda, would we have the same protocol? Oh, that question would go out to the whole board and the answer would then be. Or we're just talking agendas.
Yes, there's some, and I think there's and maybe just as far as an understanding, there is some information or questions that are so just kind of innocuous that the idea that the other four people would even really care, I don't know, as far as being able to make that decision and then saying, okay, this is information that's reported and pass, ensuring that I back out, Rusty call would be the general report, the call, here's the question, here's the response. That's just those are those nuances of the operating agreement.
Seems like it's appropriate for an agenda item. It seems overkill for most other conversations. That would be my opinion.
Seems like if it's on the agenda, that maybe there shouldn't even be an answer to the email. It's just preparing you to answer this question when we get here.
Possibly, and I can't remember, I'm
So situation.
stuck right now coming up with something, but I can imagine there would be times where a specific question might just be background information for the person, like even me versus the other format we have that information. And then hence it would just respond, so you have that information. So I just, my plan is, I started off this last year doing kind of weekly. I felt like they were just really redundant after a while. And so finding kind of that sweet spot as far as giving updates, whether they're bi-weekly updates, those updates then can inform evaluation that we set forth in your, but just I think for us is that that temperature check as far as what is the information, how's the information flowing, and just being open to the change. But if so, if it's, say this. Good moving forward as far as being able to recognize what the question is and making a determination as far as whether or not it's going to be all or not. And then change. Go on the side of caution, and whenever a question comes in, it goes back out. I don't get a lot of questions.
Well, I think, go ahead, sorry, Tom.
I think generally it's been in relation to the board agenda items. And in discussing what's going to be on the agenda or the agenda item, the vice chair get more than just a little bit of background information. They get a lot of information. That would be information that the whole board needs to get in the meeting. And then it seems like, well, that's already been discussed between the superintendent, the vice chair, and the chair. So then there isn't that robust discussion at the board meeting. And that in the distance past did happen at times, and it made it kind of, three board members kind of looking at one another and saying whether they know that we don't know. And so that in the past was an issue. You know, I don't recall too many long meetings with you for setting the agenda last year. So I don't know that that was an issue then.
I think we can also maybe just, maybe it'd be a good idea just to put it out there that, for when Drew and I are meeting with Jim to review the agenda and what might be discussed at upcoming board meetings, any questions that Drew and I have for Jim, wait until that board meeting, or wait at least until the agenda is sent out to everybody, and then we can follow up if we feel we need to ask before the meeting.
As far as I think a question an individual board member has of you, you know, it's something, I guess that's your judgment, whether it's innocuous or not. But if you think that it would be something that would be pertinent information for all the board members to have, it might be something that you push out and, you know, the report to the board members somewhere, or communication.
I'll throw out the other side of the coin is I actually appreciate if the robust discussion has happened to some degree, because you probably would ask the questions I would. And having a little bit of good dialogue ahead of time between the board chair, vice chair, and superintendent, I actually think could be helpful. So I wouldn't want you to be afraid to. There's a balance there, I guess.
Right.
As long as you're willing to repeat it.
Okay.
And I would encourage, just as a standing invitation, other board members to take advantage of, because like on every agenda we have board communication, so that's a time to air out concerns or requests or just a little check-in on, instead of waiting until the end of the year when we're evaluating ourselves to just make sure that we can maybe address stuff in the middle of the school year. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it then, just shoot me and Jim an email.
Ready for the next standard?
I think so. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Okay, standard number 8 was board operations, board staff relations. Board members are respectful of staff members in all communications and follow board staff communication policy and procedures. Score on that was 2.75. And the one comment was to clarify where the lines are on communication with staff.
Other than Jim?
Yes.
I should be good with it. I can say that the lines of communication are much more open in Pleasant Hill than I'm accustomed to. Even to the point of like visitations in Springfield. Board members were not free to go to buildings and visit. So I think to hang on to some of the culture that's part of it, I'm good with what is happening with the idea that we just have that understanding is that you hire me a lot for the district. And that we have policies to follow, and that we continue to look for ways to grow and use the information that we have those conversations as we move forward. But I didn't have any problems this last year with communication.
I think it would be important, and I was going to mention it when we got to it, but to outline that to some degree in the interaction agreement with superintendent board operation interaction agreement, just to, so we understand, like if how a school board member would go about communicating with that, other than you. Visits to the school in the capacity of a board member. It's three of us are active parents, so we said we're going to be there, but not necessarily in the scope of a board member, not representing the board.
It's this was a really robust conversation we just had at the last COSA conference with our superintendent's academy. It's coming up more as just kind of the social political divide, especially like with one of our neighboring districts is going through with the board. It really boils down to it. And the deep, dark issues, it's usually around personnel. And that's where, as an individual board member, understanding that if you're speaking, if you're trying to separate yourself from a board member, but it has personal implications, it's likely that our liability cover case will not. And then I support you. We always see. And I think that's the important step is being able, and if you have a question, then need to contact me. That understanding of, the idea of overseeing policy and then allowing me to actually implement the policy to be operations based on the personal action. And then Jim, the dark stuff is genuine person. When in doubt, just send a message, figure it out.
Input or further discussion?
And number 9 was board operations, board superintendent relations. The board and superintendent treat each other honestly and respectfully and communicate in an open, professional manner. And 2.5 was the score on that. And the comments range from very good to needs work.
Anything more specific?
Not really. One of the comments was I appreciate Jim's efforts to communicate with us and welcome communication from us. And specific here. Communication between superintendent and board needs work.
Okay. Noted.
Then number 10, values, ethics, and responsibility for self. Board collectively and individually takes full responsibility for board activity and behavior, the work it chooses to do, and how it does the work. Score on that was 2.75. The board work related to achieving district goals defined. Would like board work related to achieving district goals defined. So the comment there was What does the board need to do to achieve the district goals? What is our work that we need to do? And I think that one was, that was it.
Thank you very much.
Well, from them. Oh, sorry, there's one more matter.
Yeah, that last one is, that's, I think, the really difficult work as far as getting the board member to really live up to the policy level and being able to reflect back on. Did the budget that we brought on, for instance, did we the budget that we brought, for instance, to go to approve and the conversations that we had about that? Does it align with our strategic plan, in this case, the integrated guidance plan? Also the work that we did around the labor relations with our licensed staff, with labor relations, we have kind of classified staff. Through those items, while policies get updated, they're pretty slow and they're pretty vague as far as the dates go. So it's really difficult to really kind of envision how this policy affects outcomes as far as student achievement. And then I think also to go along with that is building in reporting functions that we're trying to do for the board, to really see the work that they're doing, to be able to ask questions, and that questions that really go back to, that's really that accountability piece. And that's just the, how do we always maintain that respectful conversation, and being able to understand that if there's a questions posed in a way that is, yes, it can be held as accountable. We might not have an answer for you that night, but the expectations that we bring it back and answer. Towards the end of the year.
The last standard,
I believe so.
board systematic improvement. The board participates in professional development and at least annually meets as a team with the superintendent in a charge meeting to focus on goals and assessment and to include action plans to accomplish the district's vision and goals. Score on that was 2, acceptable. The OSBA annual conference was mentioned as board professional development, which we talked about a little bit here tonight, and then having a productive charge meeting. So yes, this was timely.
We thought of there.
That was all the standards.
I will, I did plan on discussing the annual board conference in November, and it was basically along those same lines, like all the district staff are continuously doing professional development, and a lot of the time it's in general. As a board member, you're like, I don't know what I don't know. This is hard. I'm not coming from an educational background. This is the chance to address that concern. And my first year I went and found it incredibly useful. Wilda went, just being able to interact with folks from other parts of the state and find out what overall states, at least from the OSBA leadership, what their overall goals were. And the trainings that they have, discussions that can take place, I think it'd be incredibly valuable, even if you can't make it all 3 days. But we have a budget to be able to go. And it's downtown Portland in November. I mean, it could be raining, but it was also very pretty at the time that I went. And again, the stuff that they put on is incredibly well done. I'd like to hear what your thoughts were. The summer one that you went to. And just really useful. You have a wide variety of stuff to choose from. Like, even if a bunch of us go, we don't all have to do the same thing. It's probably best if we don't, because there's a whole bunch of stuff. If you have a particular interest, chances are you're going to find it pretty useful. So I know Drew said that he can't go because of work. I don't know if that means he can't go at all, but. I plan to go. I hope that Jen and Rusty can make it. And of course, John, but he's been doing this a long time, so.
I think I've been to 4 of them, and they are, yeah. There's a lot of useful information there. There are a lot of different breakout sessions you can go to. And you hear a lot of the issues that other school districts in the state have. And some of their problems and solutions are educational to hear.
Yeah. They also, like, when I went, they had a breakout for smaller school districts in the state that was nice to go to. So. There was this where. Am I getting ahead of myself, or were we on the schedule to talk about that somewhere else on here?
No, we did that, so just to, the board self-evaluations, do you want to provide that, John, to Kimberly to have her summarize for the board to bring to the next meeting? And we can continue to bring that forward, or it's just that we want to be a read back?
I think that was pretty much what we do with it right there.
Okay. So maybe at our next planning, the 2 of us, 3 of us want to talk about what kind of action that you guys want to see taken forward, or should not, the goals to address that piece.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did also put that email out just to solicit. Ideas for goals, because this is the charge meeting, and I don't know how much more time we have. For the charge meeting, considering it's already 7:30, but. I was only asking because I don't know if Jen had a chance to talk about her experience and the things she went to. But also was hoping we had a chance to see if anybody had goals that they wanted to set for the remainder of these, or for the school year. You have any thoughts on that?
You want, let's open it up for ideas about setting goals, so we do that
Okay.
right now. Yeah.
We actually covered one, so we're not, there are 3 of them, we talked about all of them. So,
Do you mind?
schools, one of them, I hear that regularly about more attention to the school. Measurable and observable metrics, we talked about that. A bunch. The third, maybe not, it was elevated attention to the career programs with the LCC staff and the trade opportunities out there. I don't know how to put that in a goal form. Just that relationship between LCC and the district. And what could be enhanced there?
Is it a, so it might be a matter of reporting and providing information, maybe more specific information, but there's quite a bit that we do already. But I do, is there as a goal, are you looking at the enhancement or addition of programs as well?
I think the education to what's available and potentially that students know what they can and have already available to them. It's a high priority right now at LCC. Their president is making rounds to the rural school district trying to figure out how to engage. And I know they're very engaged here already, more so than any other, according to her. But selfishly speaking, from someone in the trades, it's a desperate need out there, and feels like we could take advantage of that. So it's probably more just elevated knowledge and understanding of what is available for folks.
Would it be, I'm just thinking out loud at this point, would it be beneficial or feasible for somebody from LCC to come to a board meeting? I'm sure.
So I can, some of this is fine, I'll do it now, maybe just do it later. So, yeah, I met with, new president of the LCC, and I forget the other position, she's basically working as the liaison between the districts and LCC. SEC has got some hurdles that she's got to work through with labor relations, and when we think about the college now, for instance, so. In their labor contract, so we do a college now, and we had a teacher that is essentially certified in college to offer full credit. So the student can take a high school class and they can offer college credit for it. They have to have credentials and be able to fall under LCC's labor agreement. Their labor agreement is more strict than some of the other community colleges around the other, so we can still involved with it, work through it. So she's working on overcoming that. She's also been building relationships, and so part of what we've already dealt with, and you see in our integrated guidance plan, is development of a career college center at the high school. So we've already done some construction work, people who buy that space up. We've got some furniture changes, we've moved Kathy Ball with related activities into that office. Our student support advocate is also moved into that office. So we'll have everyone in the same space, and we've talked about expectations with the counselors for the forward. The group trails, you're going to be talking tonight about group trails. That's an our career related activities for students, the data for that, as well as the data we'll come back and share. Kathy also has got a number of events that she does throughout the year where she invites career related opportunities, businesses to come in and talk to kids, and then we also have the career fair that she puts on. In talks with the president LCC, his plan is to develop out a calendar with our high school as far as working with LCC. LCC will come out, they will meet with parents and students who are getting ready to graduate, walk them through on how to fill out the FAFSA. So taking an extra step as far as whether students planning on going to college or not, pushing towards career related college related activities, filling out the FAFSA, getting students hooked up with mentors. We will start the HOPE project this fall. I think we've got 4 students right now. So when we first started out, each district was going to have an opportunity for 2 students. Some of the districts aren't participating, so it's at least 3. I think it's possibly 4. Students go down to Garfield as a half-day program. They will have on-site instruction part of the day, and the second part of the day is career related. So they'll actually be building tiny homes when they ground up, electrical wiring, framing. Also talks in with Eugene Springfield Fire and being able to use the Eugene station over off of Chambers. By the mission, where they will actually do the training, so students can go through a process and learn over and actually even train, and also expanding through Riverbend, and LCC's got an health center as well, under nursing certification and health sciences. So there's a number of
All my goals are met.
It's a good timing.
Go home and then to refer my own ignorance.
Great. Along those lines, anybody else have any thoughts? Not specifically, well, just what Russ brought up before we.
One of mine, one similar to data. I mean, by the end of this year, I would love to have some kind of one-page report that has 4 or 5 metrics that we like, the goals or the heat match, whatever. That has historical trend by month, that looks nice and easy to look at. That can be compiled and presented on the first board meeting, the last board meeting of each month or something like that.
I think our already data suite is going to help us.
So yeah, if that's a starting point, get the full data out of that, put it into a different format or whatever needs to happen, so that we have something we can see a trend on. And then start that trend, even if we don't have a lot of data now, in 3 years, we'll have something.
Been wished for some time,
We'll make it happen.
and it's still a strong wish, you know, the. Integrated guidance plan. You've budgeted in June. For achieving your goals. and you work throughout the year. And then you hit another budget cycle where you have to budget again. But then it's not until that September, August or September, where you find out whether you've actually achieved the goals that you budgeted for over a year and a half ago, planned so far ahead for. And when you don't have measuring points along the way that are consistent from year to year to year, I don't know how you're able to adjust given the length of time between when you start looking at what you need to do to achieve those goals, set those goals, to where you find out whether you're actually gaining. When you're talking about really incremental, small gains over such a length of time, I have a hard time seeing where that's a real formula for success. It's the state's formula. The state has not been very successful in the world of education. But I think at the local level, if we had some sort of a, metric where we could say and compare from year to year and see progress on our own. And I know they've talked about, what is it, like South Dakota or North Dakota, or they have their own testing system. They've thrown out some of the, they do what they have to do to make the state or the feds happy, but then they have their own system that they go by to be able to measure progress, because we do have statewide tests, then we change the cut scores from one year to the next. So 1 year, hey, 60% of your kids met they met or exceeded. And the next year, 50% of your kids met or exceeded. Well, they changed the score at which your kids meet or exceed. And so then all of a sudden we sit here and we say, what happened to our kids? Things went backwards, and then it's the cut score changed. And Rusty talked about, does any kid score 100%? Well, I don't know. Are those tests set up so that only 1% of the kids are going to score 90 to 100%, and only 1% of the 1% are going to score 100%? So you've got 1 in 10,000 kids are going to be that 100%er.
Most likely.
I mean, that's one heck of a curve there, but is that the way the tests are set up? So is 100% ever achievable, or is 95% achievable? And so I don't know, it's one thing to serve the state and to be accountable to the state, but I'd like to be accountable to the kids who are here now and the kids that we're trying to teach right now. So that's my stand on the soapbox.
Some of that is doable as far as, I think what you're getting at, if you look at our mission statement is, are we getting kids to graduation? Are we getting kids to graduation on time? And are the skills that we're getting them to graduation and the connections that we're helping them leading into a career? Whether they start in a 2-year program and finish, or they go 1 year and then change, but they still land in a career type of opportunity. That can be harder to track over time. I think we can start to look at, I think some of these targets get there. But I want to always kind of take us back to, no matter what the targets, what the state may do, is the strategies that we put together around relationships and looking at our pedagogy and how we're delivering instruction and actually having students feel connected to a school and a district and growth is really, I think we have to say focused on over time.
I'm supportive of the strategies you developed. I think you developed good strategies. It's just from the board standpoint, we set the 30,000 feet and say, are those strategies working? It would be nice to have some measurement tool that is more timely. And I know you're working towards that. I appreciate that. So.
After doing it for almost 30 years, we're asking the same questions.
I wholeheartedly agree about the data and some of the things that I wrote down as board goals. Please understand, like, they could have very well been written in ignorance and you can say I already did that. Because I don't know. Like I said earlier, the third grade language arts was like alarming and I'm highlighting all over it, and this is a problem, and I think I feel good about where we've got with that. A more robust safety plan. For the district, but for us as well. Everything that I've observed since I started dropping in on your board meetings at the beginning of the year, like, things seem to work pretty good, but I think we should take advantage of professional development to go past good. And then I had, my major question coming in tonight was, what are the district vision? I mean, I know the mission statement, but are there priorities that we're aimed at right now? Are there like very high level? I don't want to call them goals because to me, a goal like has to have, like, it has to be measurable and achievable but what's the direction, I guess, is maybe the best way to say it. We're aimed at right now.
A lot of attention being placed at the high school around building the systems, identify, creating an identity for our middle school students. I think about systems that are on there. When you remove an entire administrative team all at once, and things weren't left in a process, they kind of just lived in the person's head, if this was small enough that they could quickly pick up the phone and make a decision, and things would just kind of go on, you don't want the next problem. All of that historical knowledge goes with them, and so we're in the process of really rebuilding the systems and actually putting them into a process that we would leave somebody else to come in and pick up the system and carry it on, which includes some culture piece as well around the high school as far as the acceptance of professional development and finding relevant professional development that works not only for the district vision for the individual teacher as well. Because without the individual teacher having some say and some excitement about what they're doing, you become kind of, I think, a robot. So those are some of the big targets, handing out data to make sure the data that we're actually collecting is good. To be able to actually collect good data, though, we have to have solid systems in place so that it's consistent as far as we take that data. And some working from attendance tracking at the high school, expansion of the CTE programs. I think a lot of those are captured. In the idea.
Other than that, I completely agree to whatever it is that we are aimed at to see data regularly, and that whatever goals we are gonna sit down and write, or Jim are following the intent of that direction.
Something to consider is that this is the makeup of the board for the next 2 years. So might be worth considering what we gotta have, like the direction we want the district to go, but realistically, we're only gonna be able to affect that for the next 2 years as the board stands. So what are some goals we can accomplish? We feel like we're accomplishable in the next 2 years. Obviously, we're not, I don't know that we're necessarily gonna hash that out tonight, but come at it from that perspective, just as board members, obviously. Keeping in mind that when it comes to standards, and making sure we meet those in terms of budgeting and, that we don't lose sight of that the administration's charged with. And also making sure we stay in our lane, but,
Focused,
what's that?
focused.
Focused and like Jenna's saying, something that we can monitor and determine whether or not, as we're monitoring it, whether or not we're achieving it, or if there needs to be a different direction taken, however we manage that.
So some of the things that I'll see if we're in the right direction here, is some of the items, like we talk about data and trends that monthly. I really see that as a strategy, and a strategy that might fit under a goal that would sound like these would correspond, I think, with my goals as well. So I kind of written these as examples of my goals. But could easily become by the board, so board goal might be aligned instruction systems. And then so the superintendent will clearly articulate the support academic expectations with an appropriate curriculum that includes context over sequence. But then underneath that, part of that strategy would be identifying data trends specific to academic achievement. Identifying the strategies. So being able to be really specific as far as which items are strategy and then how do they fit into a larger goal. Another example would be safety and security. So that would be a board goal about increasing safety and security. Superintendent will provide a school environment for staff, teachers, students, families that are inviting, accessible, safe, and secure. And then we start by identifying what the strategies would be as far as physical safety, emotional safety. Recruit, retain, and develop high quality staff. Superintendent will collaborate with district office and administrative staff to recruit, develop, support, and develop high quality teachers or educators, and then develop the strategies that go on. So feel like in the right direction, so we can start to put together some of the stuff for you guys to reflect to. And we heard around data trends, CTE related activities growth, and the communication around that, so communication in general. Strategies resulting in progress, so we can make that connection, we do that between the strategy and goals, safety, and then professional development. Question, you mentioned professional development, you're talking about board, school board professional development.
Well, under board goals, yes.
Were there others that I missed that we didn't get?
You mentioned that our mission statement's been the same for a long time. Is there any interest in updating that? Or do we think, I mean, is that going to, even if it's changed, or do we think it's going to have a major impact on meeting to meeting what we're doing?
You can read a lot of mission statements, and a lot of them are similar. And I think we know why we're here. But I also have been told that it's a good thing to repeat that at the beginning of every meeting. So it's probably not a bad idea. It's just whether everyone is comfortable with the wording of it or wishes to reword it at some time.
I actually think those 3 bullet points are very good, high level district direction priorities. Because I mean, it really encompasses the whole student.
Did you have any specific thoughts on changing it? Anything that you would like to see different in there?
I don't.
Okay. How are we feeling in general about the schools discussion?
It feels like what we miss here is an aspirational goal. And I don't know that it's appropriate for the board, but as I'm just thinking about. I don't know if this is what you're, that thing that you're looking at, what are we trying to do? What's that thing where you lay awake at night, like, I wish we could do this thing. And I think we've got a bunch of those things in a row that line up with the mission, that makes sense to me, but what it feels like we're not quite there is. Yeah, but what do we want to tell people? For example. One of the things that one of our aspiration goals is, we want to be the single place where the Hispanic community wants to come to work. That's an aspirational goal of our company. And I want a waiting list of applicants. That's an aspirational goal, and it feels like we don't have quite that. I don't know if we should. I don't know if that's the kind of thing a board should have as a thing to add to the list. But, I mean, I have zero trouble with any of this. You've accomplished this, you've accomplished your mission, but it does feel like there's something a little bit missing. Like, this is who we are. This is what we're trying to get at. We're Pleasant Hill School District #1, like literally. And figuratively. Why?
Right, yeah, what's its
Why?
part?
And that's the part where it doesn't feel like we've quite got that big why. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if anyone feels that way. That's.
Well, that's what I was actually trying to come up with, like in terms of goals, like what do we, I don't, well, I didn't use the word aspire and I can't think of it now because now that's all that's in my head, but what are we doing to make this school district here be the destination for not only families, but staff? Because at one point it was, and I'm not saying it's necessarily like tanked in an extreme way, but I don't know that it necessarily stands apart like it used to, like when I was a student. It was just generally felt in this, and at least in this county, that like this was the place to be. This is one of the better schools in the area. But I don't know how to articulate it more than to say, how do we set ourselves, find some way to set ourselves apart.
That conversation involves directly working with the staff in determining what our why is. And I can say that it's something that if you do it year after year, it becomes really tedious. If you do it every few years, you come back to it, you'll actually see that your why will become more defined as far as what it is you expect. So like we do. But that might be something that even through our first night with the OSBA and we're going to do the equity work. Is we can talk to the OSBA, which is big that as far as part of this, when you enter our third series, can we collectively have a longer vision?
Do you have any more thoughts, Rusty? I don't want to interrupt you.
I'll get that little stuff. No.
Okay.
But like it's like the identity. I saw a shirt the other day. Put it down some notes. But it was just really pretty simple. But yeah, show up, work hard, be nice. That's
Might get you a long ways.
yeah.
Ruth, for any insight, thoughts?
Well, the why we're here is for kids, for student achievement, for student growth, but how to like put that into words that are gonna be, something that we can measure or not measure, align every other goal with, like, you know, our overarching theme is whatever we decide it is, and then your goals fit under that umbrella, the board goals fit under that umbrella, and we're finding the data we need. It's gonna be a work in progress, and it's gonna adapt and change, but we find those data points that actually help us know that we're achieving the big thing by doing all everybody meeting their own smaller goals.
I guess in all this, stuff we're talking about this next year, where we're gonna be tracking in terms of student achievement, because I agree with Jen, we're here for the kids. But I also want to make sure that what we don't lose in that is the staff as well, because we don't serve the kids effectively without high quality staff, and that's not just the teachers. So I don't know that this would be any kind of a goal, but to get to what Rusty's talking about, finding a way to also review occasionally in some manner staff satisfaction, I think would be really beneficial. I have no idea what that looks like.
Depends on the time of the year. I would just say, if we're gonna survey staff, we just know exactly what it is. we're gonna do.
Right, oh yeah, I know that could be a whole can of worms, but I think to get at what we're conceptualizing, we don't get there without some way to get feedback to the board from the staff. Because I'm not criticizing at all what admin brings to us on a monthly basis, but it's still filtered. So, and we're gathering all this information on students and their progress and how and what kind of a job we're doing, which is important, but I think that we'd be missing something if we don't find a way to track how teachers are feeling, because again, I don't think we get to a place to set this district apart without finding ways to figure out, because we were not able to match pay with the districts, all the districts in this area. We're kind of a further drive. I don't know that we can, but like what we're paying teachers is enough for them to be living out here. So what else?
I can tell you, it's not enough to have them be able to live. But I will also.
I mean, it's part of it. That's got to be part of it to some degree. And I get it. It's just I'm just listening at one of the many things we're fighting against.
I do know leading up to like the labor negotiations that we went through, is that there was an era of teachers were leaving, teachers were applying for jobs, teachers were, and we didn't have any resignation from licensed staff, did we? And we've had some resignation and movement within classified, not a lot. So our retention this last year was very good. Bad, so that's one way as well, is being able to bring in some data as far as. I'm not happy with the amount of applicants that we get, but I do know the job we have open and hard to get jobs. We still have a couple of speech and English at school site. We had a school site, but being a school site, we had the other job offers at the same time. We were on we still don't have a middle school PE teacher, but I know 4J had a PE teacher at every single middle school, which did even more part of the positions. But we did hire a sciences teacher. We got the might actually. So the amount of teachers are not there, but I am happy that we are retaining, and a bit of feedback I did get after our labor relations from the teacher that for a while is in her tenure, they were never seen like 1 or 6%. So I think we're happy.
That's good to hear. And I don't know, I'm speaking for myself, but I don't know that I necessarily got the vibe that like we were in dire straits of living and losing a ton of staff or anything like that. But I also don't get the feeling just in general that it's the destination district for folks to work at. not necessarily, I don't know necessarily why, and I think it's more along the lines of, I think it's, our applicant pool, in my understanding in general, just not only here, but the state, the country is a lot smaller than it used to be, because we've had so many people leave the profession. But then we're just running into like it's the struggles of being a smaller district. But that was the case before, and maybe I just have rose-colored glasses in the past, that the reputation it had wasn't actually not that great. That it was just a school like any other out here, but it seemed to be at one point or another a destination place to be. And what can we do to make it that? Because I think that that's going to directly impact the service that we're providing.
There are some avenues. I think some of that we've recently just fallen into. What I've learned is that we've been working with University of Oregon as far as to teaching placements. The feedback that I've received is that they feel like what you brought out, even though those stand students to Junction City, which is probably really new more than more. Working in a smaller rural district is a bit of a flavor, so it's generally teachers who have grown up in a small rural district, and maybe they've married somebody and they're moving back. And from that, we don't necessarily build a very diverse group, so diversity ends up being just that, is what it is. But I will say that we, thanks to Debbie's help, we just put in that you go teach that will have a fifth grade student teaching placement from your role. That grew up in a small town and wants to work in a small district like Pleasant. Just finding those threads.
Well, I think it seems like other enrollment making, like you were talking to somebody from LCC that says that we're one of the better ones when it comes to the CTE stuff. But something, we're doing something right. Because I think that kind of word gets around. So,
Yeah. We've got one of the students that's participating in the whole project. We got a message from the grandmother. Saying, I think as far as saying that this is basically kind of reinvigorated him, saved him. He was ready to drop out of school. Now he's got this project. It's like getting him hands-on type of work. For extensions that so now she's finding creating opportunities like that, those connections for all the students, which really gets back to our whys to make sure all our students have a connection. Direction.
other thoughts, discussion? Okay. Do we need any kind of motion to make those changes to the schedule to table those other things here in the agenda to next meeting,
I do not believe so, since there are
work session?
work session, yeah.
Okay.
So I think just to recap, I think I have enough information to bring back a kind of a template of connectedness for board goal, superintendent goal strategies. In addition, we're going to review the board policies on our own, and the superintendent operating agreements with the board, and we'll see the September meeting.
Right. At this point, we're on the 3.
Yes.
Okay. So it's 8:09. We're gonna reconvene the regularly scheduled board meeting that was supposed to be at 7. If anybody's with us online and was like, joined us at 7, it's like, wait, you guys are already talking. The actual board meeting was set to start at 7 p.m. Doing board, which normally would be called a retreat board charge meeting. We'll move on to 4.0, changes and deletions to the agenda. Is that any further review? Okay, introductions in attendance of previous board meetings. Most of, other than admin, we don't have, an audience. And do we have any attendance of previous board meeting?
No.
Okay.
Or, yes, we did. We had 4. We
Okay.
had an understanding.
I meant, I'm more online.
No, none.
Okay. All right. So 6.0, swearing new board member John Oldham. So, stand. Raise your right hand.
Want me just to read
Read
that?
that, yeah, would be.
I, John Oldham, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Oregon, and the laws thereof, and the policies of the Pleasant Hill School District #1 during my term in position #1. I will faithfully and impartially discharge the responsibilities of school board member to the best of my ability.
All right, welcome back. Thanks. Okay. 7.0 public forum. I'll read this. Because I just for consistency's sake, even though we technically don't have a person audience during this portion of the board meeting, members of the public are specifically invited to present items of commendation and or concerns. At the discretion of the board chair, further public participation may be allowed at the time specific agenda items are under consideration by the board. This is under district policy BDDH. All the policies for the district are online. Individuals who are viewing online. EHSD posts the upcoming agenda on our website, pleasanthill.k12.or.us, the Friday before regularly scheduled Monday school board meetings. This will allow for public comment prior to the board meeting. Please click on the tab provided to share your comments for the school board to consider at the upcoming meeting. Either online or in public or in person at the meeting. Personnel matters may not be discussed in public at a school board meeting. Members of the public who have personnel concerns or accommodations should share them directly with the district superintendent. 8.0 board action items. 8.1 approve June 20th and July 11th board meeting minutes. Everybody has an opportunity to review those. Any concerns?
Move to approve both sets of minutes on June 20th, 2023, July 11th, 2023.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passes. 8.2 accept monthly financial statement. July. Anything in here that we feel like we need to pay attention to? Sherry, anything you want to walk us through?
Not on this monthly one, I do have information on the quarterly.
Okay. Are there any questions, concerns? Your motions to accept the monthly financial statement for July. I move that we accept the monthly financial statement for July. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes. 8.3 personnel report, 8.301, 8.302.
We've got 2 licensed staff. So each month, board of directors may be asked to approve personnel action involving licensed employees. Tonight, the board is being asked to approve the attached personnel report. If the board of directors would like to discuss any of these recommendations in executive session in accordance with ORS 2092.60, section 2, exempt public records and employees should be identified by the number preceding the name and will be withdrawn. Then further instruction from the board. None available questions. So 2 to 9. First one, high school counselor. So Clarissa Anderson, Ms. Anderson is a recent graduate of Bush County University School Counseling Program, earning her Master of Arts in School Counseling. She has been a Pleasantville School District employee since 2014, having served as a special education assistant and school registrar. Clarissa is uniquely familiar with the coursework offered at Pleasantville High School, state board graduation requirements, and data collection and reporting requirements for our high school programs. Second, the health sciences position. Christy Val. Ms. Val holds a Bachelor of Science degree in physiology from the University of California at Davis and a Master of Arts in Teaching at Ashford University. She has over 16 years of secondary classroom teaching experience specific to earth science, life science, biology, physiology, and anatomy, and experience as an adjunct teacher in health occupation and careers at Napa Valley College. Ms. Val also has work experience that includes 15 years combined service as a medical technician and paramedic. Which recommended the board of directors approve the personnel action for licensed employee as reflected in this exhibits under new hires.
All entertain motions.
Did we hire full employee as stated?
We're just accepting the report, or are we actually approving the hire?
You're actually approving this, and this way, as far as any questions about, that some of this gets out ahead of itself at times. The board's basically charged me to do the hiring.
That's why I was curious.
Making an approval to spend the funds to actually pay it. Okay, yeah.
Any further discussion, any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Steven, so did you second? Who seconded?
Oh, I apologize. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we need to revote?
Okay.
I know, right? Not necessarily, legal.
Yes. Not have to have a second, if I call for a vote,
I seconded it and called for a vote. Everybody was in favor, correct? Yes. All right, 9.1 financial reports. This is the quarterly that Sherry had alluded to.
Yes, there's a lot of little detail because I do come in on some of the revenue from last year, so I needed to be out. Yeah, but I will. So these are our unaudited yearly totals, so things change, that we'll still collect some money from time that's for the 22-23 years, and it does get put into revenue there. So you'll see some of these numbers change, but first part of the financial statement is just that recap by general subject. Some of the revenue items to note, our interest on investment is $284,000 higher than budgeted. The things that made that happen is interest rates increased. The other thing is that the way the state, the way the state financed some of the special funding, like for instance, SIA funding, we got the money at the beginning of the year and then we spent it down. So there was about $800,000 that went into the LGIP account at the beginning of the school year, where most of our other state funds are spent first, then reimbursed. So we had more cash in there. So the interest was way higher than I expected it to be. The ESSER fund also put just more money into that account. So that shows why we were quite a bit above that. The other thing is that our state school fund came in $461,000 higher than budgeted. We had an increased average daily membership and also an increased ADMR, so the weighted and the regular ADMs were both higher than we had budgeted, so that brought in extra money. We also get a combination, the state school fund figures in what we estimate we will bring in property taxes, and it takes it out of our allotment. Well, we over collected, sorry, the smoke is getting to me. We over collected our property taxes. So we brought in so far about 62,000 more than we budgeted for. And we will have 2 more payments that still are based upon the 22-23 year. But what happens is the state school fund will look at the final number and reallocate our state school fund based on that. So sometime during this school year, they will take back that money. Expecting, I'm guessing about $111,000 that they will pull out of this year's budget. Any questions on this recap of last year? The second sheet is the same numbers, just categorized them together, so it's shorter and easier to read. The synopsis, I guess, of that. The same numbers. The third one is our cash accounts, showing what we ended out at on June 30th. Those will also have a little bit of adjustment after auditors work on it, but it should be very close to that. One of the things that happened recently is that Banner approached us and offered to match, actually they offered to beat LGIP's interest rate. And they are, our funds are guaranteed as a public company or a public entity. So it is not at the risk that it once was when you use a bank other than LGIP. So they offered 0.25 more than LGIP was offering us in the middle of July. And then about a week later, LGIP raised theirs to that. So what we decided to do is just to move some of the money over into a money market in Banner. And it will improve some of our processes because we won't have the delay. Right now, we have maximums of what money we can move in a day from LGIP to Banner. And then it's always a 24-hour delay to get money to Banner. We didn't really think we wanted to put all of our money into Banner because it's just kind of nice to have it in LGIP and have that delay so that if there was something fraudulent happening, there would be more notice and more time to check it. So we are just opening a smaller Banner Bank account with the matched interest of LGIP and then improved efficiency in how we pay our bills and not having to move money in small increments regularly.
What's the rate of rate?
4.3. They are also offering us CD funds on 3/6 or 3/6 months. So one of the things that we are going to look into for future is some of that ending fund balance that we can't, unappropriated funds that we cannot use in the current year, we could put into a CD and make some more money at that, and it still would be available before the end of the current school year, because we do not want to tie up money over from one year into the other. They also are offering to shift down. So say we had a 9-month CD and we needed it in 7 months, they'll switch it over to the 6-month CD and make an adjustment in interest. We paid a little less, but they won't penalize us on that. So there's some interesting things potentially that we can do with our cash accounts. Any questions on that issue? Our last sheet in the packet is just our reserves, reporting on the reserve accounts and the special fund accounts. And where we expect them to be prioritized. And that's all I have.
Any questions? 9.2 superintendent report, 9.201 House Bill 2753. Jim.
This slide, they were not ready not to bring it here, not because I have a feeling as far as where you stand, but I mean, I'm just gonna read it. again. So the new, this new House Bill 2753 allows school boards to provide each director who is a voting member with a stipend and the amount determined by the board not to exceed $500 per month. And that can be adjusted based on the school price index. If the district school board provides a stipend, the board must allow individual directors to choose not to receive the stipend and may provide in addition to the stipend reimbursement for actual necessary expenses incurred or paid by the director in the performance of the duties of the director. And if the district school board does not provide a stipend, the board must provide reimbursement for actual and necessary expenses incurred or paid by the director in the performance of the duties of the director. Which I believe that's the history of the district anyway. Those things would be probably good. Not asking for a decision tonight, but I want to bring this to your attention. I think it would always be the practice of the district that if the individual members have expenses, for whatever reason, that would go through the process. And which it would be for those things. New House Bill. This is something we want to bring forward at a later date to talk more about. We just need to go through the budget process and being able to put that in the budget. We should have it.
Who's already passed?
Okay. I didn't give you quite a bit of reporting. I think what I'll just finalize with is just some of the bigger summer work projects. I remember we talked about it earlier in the spring. We did hire a couple of student workers that have been helping out facilities and maintenance crew over the summer. Working on mowing, edging, trimming, power washing. We replaced, contracted out, replaced 2 of the water pumps that were failing at the elementary school, finished in HVAC system over at the high school. We did some repairs to the crow's nest of the grandstand stadium. Still got a number of things to do. There was a wooden deck that's outside the library that was put in years ago. Some of that was running out and it wasn't to code because of the windows and height that was built. We've torn that out. Everything put a cement pad in there for students, and then got some tables ordered for students as well. So we're also, last year when I came in, we kind of put a stop to students in a large scale leaving campus. The church up the road helped out as far as being able to have students come there that can drive, so to get off campus and still kind of have some of the freedom they've gotten up there. The church stuff and it's lunch stuff. But we've been working on just trying to make the campus more inviting for students to encourage them to stay on campus as well. So that's where we're finishing up some maintenance projects. There was a beam that we finished up in the spring, in the community center that are not now. Finished that. And we started to the budget process for next year, including irrigation. Communication systems, and this also goes to some safety pieces as well. So we've got the high school. We worked this last year on getting the bell scheduled. Had a heck of a time with the contractor as far as actually getting in problem solving doing that. And then we still have difficulties with the clock system and getting the clocks to actually line up so the bells are going at the right time. At the same time, in elementary, just system is still functional, but there are no parts available which are down, so it's had that outdated. So we've got SMED who we're contracting with to actually complete full system stuff with the communication and bell system. That will also be an internal automated system for security. So it's basically a one touch for the secretary, being able to restore the lockdown, grab out a message for which staff like to do with this emergency. versus the principal or secondary having to go out in their actually do like a thing, say, during an actual event. So those two things would happen as well. But like everything else, parts are.
Follow up for Jim. Okay. 10, board communication. I know I've asked a couple of times, Jen, do you have anything else you wanted to say about the trainings you went to?
I'll hit a couple things. I told Jim on my way in, a lot of times you go to these things and it's just death by PowerPoint and, but I had an advantage of this one that I knew nothing, so there was a lot to learn. But the major themes, which you kind of put together from the things I said here tonight, but was, be student driven and really everything falls under that. Staff falls under that, budget falls under that, falls under that. But make sure that, you're spending time in your board meetings, looking at the data and discussing that to remain focused on it. One thing that I heard that you guys have probably picked up over the years is that just like set me free a little bit was in my regular job, if there's a problem, I'm expected to report the problem and give a solution, not just report the problem. And I was feeling overwhelmed coming in because like education is not my thing. I don't know. I don't even know where to start with a solution or a plan. And they really worked at driving that line of the board is governance, superintendent is management. We're the what are we doing, and administration is how are we going to get there. So I heard that a number of times, and finally time number 5 it was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to have the solution. I just lean on these other people. So that was great. There was a huge push to we can't fix everything at one time. We can work on anything that we choose, but we can't fix all the things at one time. And so to find whatever it is that your district wants to focus on and do that really well until it's done. If it's something that actually hasn't been in, and some things just don't. But super glad I went. Thank you for allowing me to go. It was. I feel so much better about being here than I put up with.
I will again encourage everybody to go in November. I would, like I said before, so put me down as attending.
Oh, I had one more thing. There's an Oregon Rural Schools Committee that has started in the last school year. They have petitioned OSBA to become a caucus, which basically means that group will get a budget from OSBA, and they will also get a voting seat on the OSBA board. I went to their little chat, find out what their parameters were as far as what's rural, and we do qualify, but I sat down at the table and was like, 12 people were talking, and that's the question everybody wanted, is does my district qualify? And I'm sitting there thinking I'm from a small district, and I think I was the biggest district represented at the table. If they're talking about graduating classes of 3, 8, and I'm starting to feel pretty good about our 90% class size. But so when that all actually hopefully becomes a thing in September, I think would be very beneficial for us to get involved in. They have their own lobbyists in Salem, and they're focusing on getting professional development out to the smaller, further out communities, They're focusing on helping, you know, like being rural has its unique issues and, hoping to. If somebody's already doing something and has a framework that's working, getting that out to the rest of the rural schools. And then also having a big collective voice at the state level.
Sounds valuable.
It sounds like, yeah.
The rural schools are, it is interesting because August, a lot of times when all of Department of Ed comes back as well. And my email box just goes ding, 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 and it can be overwhelming to a small rural district, whereas Eugene, Springfield, Bethel has got a department, somebody to handle each one of those emails. And you're just looking at going. Sorry, and there's so much, even for somebody who's been in education for years, there's so much educational jargon as far as we can only do all of the junk to find out. Do I have to do something? Especially on the one. So that advocacy from OSBA around rural districts is really important. And clear the path. You know, for the public, say oftentimes policy that comes out of those districts that makes sense for what they want to do doesn't fit a small rural district.
So is there anything that we need to do to,
Once they are theoretically approved as a caucus through OSBA, they're gonna send out information on having your district join. I'll keep an eye on for us. They're voting September 20th.
And when we get the time for the September 12th, region hall, maybe we'll send that out. So. Everything needs to.
and then the only other thing for board communication from me is I would like, a volunteer, I would lean more towards Rusty or John. To be at that breakfast on August 30th. For the teachers. I mean, I'm talking 10-15 minutes.
Put it in here,
Okay.
see, I don't know if I can do it or not, but I'll try.
I think it'd be really important, just going back to that. Investment in staff piece. And I put my money where my mouth is, but I made these travel plans like back in May.
How long will it last?
Well, I think, so breakfast starts at 7:30, we begin at 8, I can even rearrange and have board member introductions up front if you had to like take it off.
Yeah, why not maybe?
It's possible.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't have to be any more than what I said at graduation, I think just something, just having a presence there, and we appreciate you and. We look forward to working together. I don't know, I'm sure you'll be fine, all the speaking you've done, but. I think that just that 2-3 minutes will go a long way. Any other board communications?
Just started at the clock last year. Should have. Set that 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, if something comes up, no.
I offered a remote in, but I don't know that it would carry much weight. Beach behind me.
Go get them.
Waiter, my time. All right, 11, any other business? All right, 12, next meeting is September 11th, 7 p.m. right here. And then 13 will adjourn.